reeling, gasping, taken over the edge into madness.
A few days ago I finished my first playthrough of Darkest Dungeon, and I immediately felt this insatiable desire to discuss it, because Darkest Dungeon is a great example of how it uses three key aspects to really create a mood. And that mood or atmosphere is pervasive throughout the entire game, but it's no more apparent or perfectly executed than when you first start the game. Though before I get into the specifics of the opening, I first want to explain why Darkest Dungeon is effective by drawing a parallel between it and the opening of Silent Hill 2. Now, Silent Hill 2 is lauded as one of the greats when it comes to horror gaming, and part of that is the mood, the atmosphere, the pervasive sense of dread and despair. There are several ways in which this is achieved, but I feel there is one essential moment that is often overlooked: the main menu. Though, yes, underwhelming at first glance, what makes this so effective is that, and this pun was not intentional, it's silent. This is somewhat eerie in and of itself, but it's how that silence is broken that really creates a palpable sense of dread and despair. That noise. That noise is so jarring, so unexpected, but above all so strange and demoralising. It's incredibly effective for something so basic. So how does Darkest Dungeon essentially expand on this idea? Well, as I mentioned earlier, you have three key aspects. You have your vocabulary, your composition, and your H.P. Lovecraft. Just like Lovecraft's work, Darkest Dungeon is about staring into the face of hopelessness and despair, inevitable failure, and insignificance in the shadow of an unfathomable and insurmountable horror. And the player is made to be very aware of this once they start the game. This message pops up every time to remind you that what lies ahead is no easy task. It's crushing the first time you read this, already the odds are stacked against you. The vocabulary used to set up the theming born from Lovecraft's work ensures that despair begins to take over before the game has even begun. Of course, this message is accompanied by music, and there's a certain quiet, understated quality to the music when reading the text. It's ambient, working as an accompaniment to the information being given. The music and text pair well together to gradually drain hope from the player, before the text trails off and introduces the title screen. This moment is a punch in the gut. Now, I know nothing about musical composition, so I won't pretend to, but from what I've read, this moment is called an accent, which is an emphasis or stress or stronger attack placed on a particular note as a result of its context. The context in this instance being the realization as to what the player is about to confront. I said earlier that Lovecraft's work is most known for how its characters are all but insignificant in the shadow of an unknowable and insurmountable horror, and this crushing change of music to a theme so overwhelming captures that feeling perfectly. As a small aside, the music and language maintain this feeling throughout the entire journey. For one, the music never really takes on a victorious tone, no matter how well you're doing. There's always an underlying feeling of desperation. You're not so much succeeding as you are persevering. And then you have the narrator, voiced by Wayne June, who commentates over the events with Lovecraft's almost overly descriptive flourish. And incidentally, Wayne June has the best voice I have ever heard in my life.
And now, the darkness holds dominion. Black as death.
To wrap everything up though, I feel that Darkest Dungeon is a wonderful example of how inspirations, and in this case Lovecraft, can be implemented into anything to create a certain tone. Lovecraft was an author, but you can hear his influence in the music, and you can read it in the vocabulary, and you can just feel it. You can feel it in the crushing weight of that main menu as you are tasked with slaughtering a nameless eldritch horror. If Darkest Dungeon is a demonstration of man's futility against these ancient cosmic gods, well, there's really only one way to try and prove otherwise.
Another soul battered and broken.